Last week, Sam took us through Psalm 71. Today, we're not studying any particular psalm, but looking at some background information in the book of Psalms as a whole, before continuing with specific psalms in coming weeks. The information I'm sharing with you today has come from a book called Unlocking the Bible by the well-known Christian writer and teacher David Pawson. The book gives background information and commentary on all the books of the Bible, and is so useful to set the scene and the cult of the time and culture to better enable us to understand the book we're reading. The whole book of Psalms, it seems, took nearly 1,000 years to write. Most was written at the time of David, around 1000 BC, some in the time of Moses, around 1300 BC, and some at the time of the exile, around 500 BC. The word psalm literally means to pluck or twang, referring to the stringed instruments used to accompany them. It's amazing to think that the forerunner of the modern harp has been around this long. They cover all the human emotions, positive and negative, the things that we might want to say to God in our joy, excitement, hope and peace, but also in our frustration, jealousy, despair, fear and envy. David Pawson divides the Psalms into three particular kinds, which he calls the please Psalms, the thank you Psalms, and the sorry Psalms. Although written as a strong worship focus, they weren't intended to be used by priests alone. There is almost complete absence of the mention of altars, priests, vestments and incense. They were very much for common usage to help with ordinary people's worship and walk with God. The book is actually 5 hymn books grouped together, all different lengths with amazing variety. They were all written in Hebrew poetry and best read aloud. David Pawson writes that they can't be analysed in the same way as we might focus on each verse in Paul's epistles, for instance. Rather, he feels that over-analysis destroys their beauty, and better is to read the whole psalm, meditate on it, let it sink in, and if necessary, repeat the process. Each of the 5 books ends with a doxology. See Psalms 41, 72, 89 and 106, with Psalm 150 rounding off all 5 books. David was a shepherd, warrior, king and musician, and there is a sense of his musicianship in the Psalms he wrote. His writings also reflected events in his life. For instance, Psalm 51 was written after the seduction of Bathsheba, when he realised he'd just broken 5 of the commandments. And Psalm 30 was written when he realised he'd been overly stroking his ego. Psalm 23, of course, reflects his own experience as a shepherd. We could go on for ages identifying the reasons behind so many of the Psalms. Anglican church services up until about 15 to 20 years ago included a sung psalm, sung in metrical verse. Fine if you knew how to sing them, but as ageing congregations dwindled, the practice disappeared, probably in all but very high churches, and psalms are now read instead. They were lovely to sing, but understandably difficult for many, especially if people weren't musical. This information barely touches the sides of the wealth of commentary in David Pawson's book, but it serves well as a general background. He has much more to say about the analysis of the book itself. The guidelines he suggests for using psalms are as follows. Reading 1 psalm a day is a good habit. Some are ideal for bedtime reading, helping to dispel destructive emotions and bad dreams. To read them even if not relevant to our current circumstances, so as to be ready for if and when they do become relevant. Giving a title to the psalm to help concentrate on its content. Translate the psalm into our own words and use them for comfort, especially in times of sickness and death. All in all, the psalms are meant to lead us into passionate worship that glorifies God.